A bigger battery pack, longer range, higher efficiency, quicker charging, and a more powerful motor. This is the 2024 Volvo XC40 Recharge. And you're watching It's Only Electric. It's time to test range, acceleration, and noise. Let's go. So the updated 2024 model is from now on rear wheel biased, and this is the extended range single motor version, meaning that it only has one motor, and that's at the back. 252 horsepower, 420 newton meters of torque, does 0 to 100 in 7.3 seconds, and that's one thing we're going to test. So the WLTP range is up to 573 kilometers. This one has the 20-inch wheels instead of the original 19-inch wheels, so the range drops to 556 kilometers, but that's a big gain compared to the older version. Tires, Pirelli Scorpion 2, staggered setup, so 255/40 at the back, 235/45 at the front. So let's start with the range and consumption test and then continue with acceleration and noise. I'm now sitting in the XC40. This is the first stretch of the consumption and range test. And for you that haven't followed me before and watched my range test, this is something I do for all the cars I review. I do this test to test the consumption and to be able to create comparable results. I always stick to this exact same cycle. So the cycle is 80 kilometers long and consists of mixed speeds between 50 all the way up to 110 kilometers per hour. The average speed of the whole cycle is 93 kilometers per hour. And I stick to a certain set of rules to be able to create a comparable and consistent result. The first rule is I always set the AC to auto and cabin temperature to 20 degrees Celsius. I always stick to the speed limits. And the last rule, I always activate the Eco Drive mode if possible and available. In this car though, there is no drive modes at all. You just jump in and drive, so it's all about your right foot and the granularity of how you use it. So no Eco mode available for the XC40. It's time for the first consumption check-in. Currently, I have put 25 kilometers behind me, 110 kilometers per hour stretch just finalized. So average consumption is, for the moment, 17.4 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometer. And I expect it to drop a bit because the speeds are now a bit slower for a while. Now currently 80 kilometers per hour. So I hope and think that the consumption will drop further down, but let's see about that. Lately, I have been getting a lot of questions about like, hey man, you live in Sweden, you're in the Swedish market, you are reviewing cars, why not Volvo? My answer to that is, to be frank, I didn't think that the older version of this car and the C40 did live up to my expectations of what a modern electric car should be able to perform. The range was too low, the efficiency too low, the price a bit too high given what you actually get. So I didn't want to ruin my view on the brand and not for the channel either. So I have been waiting, and the waiting is now over, and the update on this car is really exciting, and it's time to do a review. I mean, upgrading the car from the old 75 kilowatt hours of net capacity to 79, that's 4 kilowatt hours of a difference. And also upgrading the charging up to 200 kilowatts instead of 150. And changing the powertrain from being front wheel drive bias to rear wheel drive bias. And on top of that also update the motor or develop a new motor here locally in Sweden by Volvo that's more powerful but also more efficient. That altogether created a range of 573 kilometers compared to the old front wheel drive single motor version that delivered 425 kilometers. That's almost 150 kilometers in difference. That's really big. So now I think Volvo really delivers. Despite being a combustion engine platform, the specs still looks good. And that's why it's time to test this car. Status update, just past the halfway, 40 kilometers put behind. Average consumption for the moment, 16.0 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometer. So it has been going down and will probably continue going down for a while now before going up at the end, because it's a higher speed there. So back home from the range test, 80 kilometers done. Average consumption actually ended up at 16.6 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometer. That's a bit over what I did expect. I mean, fairly good conditions, totally dry roads, 17 degrees outside Celsius. Will be hard to beat this consumption. So 16.6, that leads to a full range of 476 kilometers. That's almost 86% of the stated WLTP range of 556 kilometers. The aerodynamics of the XC40 is probably one of the problems, because it has a really flat surface at the front and is fairly high for its size, so it gets punished in higher speeds. So I actually saw a significant drop when going in lower speeds, and immediately when I went back up on the motorway on speeds over 100 kilometers per hour, the range actually drops and the consumption gets higher. So let's move on to the acceleration test. It's time for the first 0 to 100 kilometers per hour test. State of charge 91%, 16 degrees outside, dry roads. Go. Picks up.
0 to 60 miles per hour time 6.89 seconds. 0 to 100 km time 7.24 seconds.
Okay, first attempt, 7.24 seconds, 0 to 100 kilometers per hour. 6.89 seconds, 0 to 60 miles per hour. So specified 0 to 100 time is 7.3 seconds. So this is a perfect score. Slope 0%. So a bit under the specified 0 to 100 time. Let's do another attempt.
Zero to 60 miles per hour time 6.72 seconds. 0 to 100 km time 7.10 seconds.
So even a better score this time. 7.1 seconds, 0 to 100, 6.72 seconds, 0 to 60 miles per hour. Let's do a last try. I mean, the conditions are good, and with this amount of power, 252 horsepower, 420 newton meters of torque, you don't need to warm up the tires if it's not exceptionally cold outside. Final attempt, still 91% state of charge.
0 to 60 miles per hour time 6.90 seconds. 0 to 100 km time 7.32 seconds.
A bit slower this time. So still around specified time. I think that's enough. We get the point. XC40 Recharge, extended range, single motor, that's a long name, seems to deliver according to the specs Volvo gave us. So that was a couple of acceleration runs. Best possible time I achieved was 7.1 seconds, 0 to 100 kilometers per hour, and 6.72 seconds, 0 to 60 miles per hour. And that's actually 0.2 seconds faster than the claimed time of 7.3 seconds from Volvo. So that's good, and that's at 91% state of charge, and no problem whatsoever to keep the power to the ground. No wheel spin, nothing. But I mean, not enough power to struggle in that manner. Let's move on to the noise test. And when it comes to noise, I always measure the noise the same way, driving the same stretch, different speeds, 50, 70, 90, and 110 kilometers per hour. And this is the result, because I don't want to bore you driving around measuring the noise level. And by the way, I always put the microphone at the same place, and it's always placed in head height on the passenger side. Let's look at some comparable results. I haven't tested small SUVs. This is the first one. So the most comparable results I have is the Tesla Model Y and the BMW iX3. Here's the result, and here you can compare them. And as you see, the BMW iX3 is the most silent of those three cars. It's a bit more silent than the XC40. The XC40 is still more silent than the Tesla Model Y running on 19-inch wheels. And keep in mind that this car is running on 20-inch 5-spoke wheels. So it's probably a bit more noisy than on the standard 19-inch wheels. A fairly pleasant experience and approximately in the ballpark I expected it to be. I mean, this is a small SUV. It's not the most luxurious Volvo you can get, and it's not meant to be the most silent car you can get from Volvo. So now we have looked at the consumption and range, acceleration and noise. I will try to summarize my experience with the car. I mean, I have been waiting a long time now for getting a Volvo with decent specs, and this update was that signal for me. But I think it still falls a bit short from its specified WLTP range. I mean, 86% in these almost perfect conditions should be able to get a lower consumption than 16.6 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometer. It should be around 15 to be called efficient, I think. A bit disappointing. It doesn't seem like the efficiency is that much better than on the older versions. So the additional range is more or less due to the bigger battery pack. And maybe a small gain in efficiency, but not by much. So all in all, decent range, 476 kilometers. And my recommendation for you is not to go for the four-wheel drive version. Stick to the single motor rear-wheel drive. That will give you the most bang for the buck. It's a lot cheaper. It has more range. I mean, not plenty of power, but more than enough power for doing your daily driving. It doesn't feel slow. It doesn't feel weak in any way. So I think that's the sweet spot. The single motor, extended range. Yeah, I mean, that's the one I would have gone for. I hope this information comes in handy and that you enjoyed the video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And as I always say, stay electric. Thank you for watching. Speak to you soon.